All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. I have some pretty exciting news that I thought was not gonna get much attention. As soon as I saw the news articles, I was expecting more people to talk about it, but I am known on the podcast pretty regularly for being one of those guys that's addicted to checking the Apple Certified Refurbished page. Right, I check this all the time, mainly because I've bought things from Apple Certified Refurbished, and they include your warranty. They replace a ton of the components. Oftentimes, they replace the battery, they replace the glass, sometimes even the chassis. Basically, they replace a ton of the components that go into these products when they put them on Certified Refurbished, and they have now started selling, unless all of these sold out already. I'm not sure if they did, but essentially, they've started selling the good iPad Pros, the ones that I've been using, the 2018 models and 2020 models, which there's really nothing wrong with. They're just somewhat similar to each other. But Apple started selling certified refurbished iPads that, I kid you not, these should flatline the sales of the iPad Air. Okay, I'll go out on a limb here, and I wish more people knew about this. The sad part is probably not that many do. But I'll bring them up here because I believe they're still available. I want to show you that this is not made up. This is from the Certified Refurbished section on Apple's website. They are legit starting the 11-inch iPad Pro. This is the one with Face ID, the one with 120 hertz, the A12X chip. $519. This is the same amount as storage as the base model iPad Air that costs $600. And in my opinion, is objectively worse than this. This has the smart connector. This has USB-C. It has quad speakers. iPad Air has stereo speakers, but this one has 4. I don't know if that makes a huge difference, but it's technically a larger display. It's 11 inches instead of 10.9. It's a higher refresh rate display. It's a vastly better biometric. I'm sorry, but we might bicker back and forth on Face ID when it comes to the iPhone versus Touch ID, and a lot of people want both. A lot of people prefer Touch ID, but at least with the iPad, Face ID works in multiple directions, and it's so simple. And this, of course, is going to work with the Magic Keyboard case. It's going to work with all the same accessories as the iPad Air. But essentially, they've got them in both color options, too, even. Essentially, as long as these two options are available, I see no reason why anyone on Earth, unless this isn't available in your country or something, I don't know why anyone on Earth would buy an iPad Air right now when this thing exists. They say when it includes all this, the manuals and accessories. It's a new battery and outer shell. You see that? The same 1-year warranty as a brand new iPad. They literally take out the old battery and put a fresh new battery in there, and the outer shell is in this whole chassis is new. I believe even the glass is new. So it comes with the 20-watt USB-C charge brick. That thing's worth $20 as is. We're talking almost original iPad starting price here for a much larger display, way better camera, way better biometric, way better refresh rate. A12X chip is still killer. I don't care what people say about the A14 chip. I think they're going to get the same amount of updates, to be frank with you. And if you're worried about software updates, let me bring you this way. This is $9 more than the iPad Air. $9. And it has more RAM, twice the storage, more cameras on the back. It's got LiDAR if you care about that type of thing. But I believe the iPad Air has either, I think, 4 gigs of RAM or 3. And this has definitely got 6 from when we've tested last year. It's got the ultra-wide camera. Not that that makes a huge difference, but it's twice the storage for $9 more. So if the A12X wasn't enough for you, I would once again point you towards A12Z, which is fantastic. But overall, the fact that this is available, I think it looks like both options you can order today, at least where I am. It's probably different in other countries, I'm sure, but I have no clue why at this point anyone should buy an iPad Air if these certified refurbished products are available. They're just an astoundingly good deal, and they're still here. These used to sell out instantly, and they used to sell really quick, but maybe because the iPad Air has been out for so long now, Apple just doesn't care if the sales of it flatline, perhaps. I'm not sure if that's the exact reason, but to me it makes no sense what the iPad Air serves a purpose for at this point. Does this work with military discounts? That I don't know. You'd have to be in the military and get back to me on that one. Booker Barra, thank you for becoming a YouTube supporter. Appreciate that. Compare weights. I don't know if the weight makes a huge difference. I'm sure they're almost identical. They're both 11-inch iPads, and they both fit in the Magic Keyboard case, so the weight's not going to be drastically different. Let's see. Got an iPad Pro 11-inch last week for $669. Loving it so far. Great upgrade for my 2015 iPad Pro. Yeah, that's a wonderful deal. I'm not sure what A. Do you mean Australian dollars? Got to remember what the A means. Do they have it in sale? Yeah, they have a bunch of different models here, but I still think that this is an amazing deal, and I'm shocked that iPad Air is still being sold alongside deals like this. This is not sponsored by Apple, believe it or not, as much as I would probably make a great Apple sponsorship. Alvin Ty just said, yes, they do work with military discounts. So if you can get a military discount, I'm sure they work with the Apple Card. So if you have the Apple Card, you can get 3% off on these as well. But to me, I have never seen... I already thought that the iPad Pro 11-inch was an astounding deal from Apple for just the amount of silicon, the performance, the display, the biometric USB-C, which I love. Overall, that's just an amazing package, one of the best value products you can buy from Apple. And now they're at record low. I've never seen Apple sell the 2018 iPad Pro for $520. That's just an amazing deal. And while this is not a sponsorship, I am kind of directly advertising for them, aren't I? I mean, it's kind of helping them and not helping them at the same time. What I need to ask the chat here for some simplification, why would someone get an iPad Air when these exist? Do you have a reason? Kevin says it's $467 on the military page. Holy crap. They're practically giving them away at this point. Well, thank you for your service, I guess. Jackson says, got the 2020 iPad Pro, but got a bit of FOMO. It'll be supported for many years, right? Yeah, right now they're still providing software updates for the iPad Air 2, which came out, I believe, in 2014. So that one is getting iPadOS 15. So I think it's at 8 years. It's at 8 years of software support, and I see no reason why the iPad Pro would not get that much or more. Brand new versus used. These are not used, though. Used is you found it on Facebook and someone's trying to sell it, and then they hand it to you after you buy it. Certified refurbished means they replaced the exterior, they replaced the metal, the chassis, and they replaced the battery. So I don't know what else you're worrying about aging. What's going to age with certified refurbished if they've given you a brand new shell and a brand new battery and you get a full warranty? What's the deal? Get the benefit of nobody other than manufacturers have ever touched the device in the box. Well, yeah, even new is in that case. The manufacturer has to touch it. That's how it got in there. How much more do you think I should pay for the 2021 12.9-inch instead of getting a refurbished 2020 for display, center stage, etc.? That's a tough one. I think it's difficult when the deals... Well, let's look at that. We've been looking all over the... YJ says the iPad Air exists because colors. Yeah, I guess you got me there. You got more color options with the iPad Air, so they won me over. But if we start looking at 12.9-inch models, just 12.9-inch models, oh my God, it's still really good. $629 for the 2018 model. That's the one I have right now. This is still an amazing deal. And as long as these are still including fresh new batteries, yep, new battery and outer shell, and it comes with the accessories, that's a pretty dang hard deal to beat right there. Holy crap. If you want the 2020 model for the extra RAM, this is $879. So think about that math for a second. To get it with the M1 chip, which, in my opinion, iPadOS has nerfed Apple Silicon so hard that the M1 chip doesn't make a big difference to me. I went from the M1 iPad Pro back to my A12X, and performance-wise, I do not see a difference. Even in multitasking, I don't see a difference. But yeah, if we're going with 6 gigs of RAM and the A12Z chip, it starts at $880, where it's $1,100 for the M1 model. These are just insanely good. If you're willing to spend $1,100 on your iPad, If you go with a refurbished option, you can get, holy crap, 512 gig. This is the 2020 model. Oh, wow. So 6 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage for $1,000. That's still $100 cheaper than your mini LED iPad. And that's a fresh battery outer that's, I don't know, man. I would say if storage is at all important to you, this is just an astounding deal. If you care about cellular, man, these go 512 gig with cellular for $1,009. I've just never seen the prices so low here. I had to talk about them. And I feel like not enough people know about this. So many people don't even know refurbished exists from Apple. And it is reputable. People don't get stuff with scratches on it. And, of course, in the case of the iPads, they replace the whole battery. So you're not getting any battery health issues. It's like a fresh cycle. And especially for the 12.9-inch options being that cheap. Like, that's going to eat into the resale value of my iPad. I don't plan on selling it, but geez. So last year's cellular with 1 terabyte of storage for $1,300. That's quite substantially cheaper. I get you don't get center stage, and I guess you don't get 16 gigs of RAM, but man, I just don't know how anyone, especially in the Android market, could compete with that. That's an astounding deal. Let's see. Hello, how long have I been a member? Does it work the same as Twitch? Yeah, if you hover over the badge next to your name, it says 6 months. So calm down, Drew. It's not that big a deal. I think it is. I've never seen iPads that cheap. Tell me why it's not a big deal. There's only one refurbished iPad in Australia, and it isn't on sale. Oh, darn. Apple Magic Keyboard for 12.9-inch iPad Pro is $200 at Best Buy. Oh, that's a good deal. So if you can get, if you're looking for a laptop and you don't care about pro-class software, you can get a $629 12.9-inch iPad Pro and then get a $200 keyboard case from Best Buy, and you're not even at $900, and you have a basically 13-inch laptop, 2-in-1. And if you don't care about, Xcode and Final Cut and that kind of thing, and you just want a basic laptop, this is a laptop with 120 hertz, fast charging, USB-C. It's got Face ID working in multiple directions. It's got Apple Pencil support. There's just so much packed in with that value. That's incredible to me. You don't get the 5G on those cellular iPads. I know, but I consider that a selling point. I like that, actually. I would rather not have the 5G. That's how I know the battery life's going to be better. Do you hate the idea of the Samsung Google ecosystem somehow getting better than the Apple one? No. Why would I hate that? I want ecosystems to get better. You guys know how much I complain about Apple and crap in their ecosystem? The reason I'm frustrated by that is because I know there's not an ecosystem outside of Apple's that can compete. There's nowhere close to that in the Google or Samsung ecosystem that works anywhere near as well as Apple's does. If there were more options of ecosystems that were this ingrained and worked this well together, where like my watch is working with my computer and I can airdrop things between my iPad, my phone, and my Mac, and I've got Final Cut optimized video editing software that's built right into my Mac that's been made by the same people who made the hardware. If there was something like that other than Apple that was better, then that's the primary reason I don't call my channel the Apple Sheep. I called it Tailosive Tech because I want it to be scaled or bigger than just Apple. I want to be able to talk about products outside of Apple. And I'd love to be able to try an ecosystem that was arguably stronger or definitely stronger than Apple's. I'd be super into it. But so far, I haven't seen that happen. I've tried, but I haven't got it there. Senior Bell 67, thank you for the super chat. Any interest in the new Samsung products tomorrow? I've glossed over the leaks here and there. I think I'll do a video on it at least. I might react to the event live, depending on if people want it or not. But overall, I don't see much groundbreaking stuff. I mean, I think foldables still suffer from the same issue of not offering that much different off of regular smartphones to be worth the extra money. In fact, there's always just going to be a few built-in drawbacks. And I think that is my fundamental problem with foldables. All the things that I've heard they're doing, like The Z Fold 3 has S Pen support now, or it's water resistant, or it's a couple $100 cheaper. It's all like, okay, it's a better fold, but it's still a fold. And ultimately, the reason they're not the mainstream and the reason you don't have mass adoption with them is because the use case of them is not incentivizing enough for people to want to switch. So anyway, I'm like mildly curious, but overall I'm not like psyched out about it. I don't think they're going to change anything. The foldables are still a small niche of the market, and I don't think after tomorrow they're going to become any more than that. I think they'll still be a niche after the next announcement. Super chat from Ray Day. Thank you very much. Who says, "Hey Drew, just finished my second day of virtual training to become a security guard, and now I'm just relaxing watching your stream. Also, I'll be sticking with my 8th gen iPad for a while." Well, congratulations. Second day of virtual training. I wonder how they teach someone with virtual training. What do they tell virtual trainers to be security guards? And don't let people get in, all right? Where can we find these cheap iPad Pros? Oh, here, I'll make it easier for you. There's a section. All you really have to do is Google Apple Certified Refurbished, and I'll post it in the chat. I think. No. Okay, yeah, it did work. For a second, it was just a big wall of text, but I posted it in the chat. Basically, you can go there and see if they're available in your area, but, I mean, holy crap. This one's, they have some going over for, I was just looking now at the non-pro options. Look at this. They have them go $230 for the refurbished iPad, 6th generation. So this has the A10 chip. Yeah, that one's pretty old. That's not as great a deal. A10 chip, this is going to get discontinued in probably a couple years, but I guess it's not too bad if someone really just needs a basic iPad. But yeah, either way, all you got to do is Google Apple Certified Refurbished and you can find it. It's pretty easy. But Sam K says, "Do you think it's possible for a company to launch a line of products as interconnected as Apple's just out of the blue, even over the course of 5+ years, or is it too late?" No, it's definitely not too late. I just have doubts that companies can stay committed because I just haven't seen that commitment from other companies that Apple has towards their operating systems and how their ecosystem works together. You know, I think Google has the capacity. I think Google has a ton of money, and they have all you really need. There's probably a lot more to it. I know you need talent and you need engineering and stuff, but at the end of the day, to get talent and to get engineers that know how to work well and come up with creative solutions, you really just need a crap ton of money, because that's how you hire people. You hire up employees and you hire up different engineers and stuff that are creative and are talented to work for you. And Google has a ton of money, and I'm excited for them to break into the silicon game, and now they're working on their own CPUs, and they're going to be powering the next Pixel phone. I have not seen Google stay super committed to hardware, though, and I've seen them like bizarrely screw up things in the past, which has made me like not have a lot of faith that they're going to get this silicon right, and that they're going to have issues with making it as good as Apple's silicon, because I feel like Apple's really experienced with making their own chips and stuff, whereas Google isn't, and Apple kind of has been an industry leader in this for a while, so we'll wait and find out, I guess, when the speed tests are available. But I believe Google has the ability to just put a ton of work and a ton of money and emphasis into making a ecosystem that could potentially be as strong as Apple's, but they have to stay committed to it. And we know Google, you know, they have whole websites dedicated to tracking all the things that Google has given up on. And I've seen Google announce one thing and then quit the next year and then announce another thing and then whatever. So they give up on things very quickly, and maybe under the right leadership, and if they had the right direction, they could make a phone, watch, laptop, and make more productivity-based software, more advanced software for their Chromebooks, or if they wanted to get into the desktop world. You know, depending on how well this Tensor chip goes, it's not impossible. I'm just going to say it's unlikely, because I've seen how Google has tried to get into new markets before, and then typically what happens is it doesn't go very well, it doesn't sell very high, and then they just give up on it. So they're like, well, if it didn't work at first, why even bother at this point? So that I don't see happening. And the same thing with Samsung, is they can do a really high-end and really powerful phone, and they can make really, really good hardware. but they don't want to commit to their own software. They're too afraid of losing the Play Store, and they want to still keep running with Android. They don't want to fully commit to making their own OS from the ground up, although I think they could. They have the capacity. They're just too scared of the market share they would lose and of having to build up a whole app market all over again through the Galaxy Store. I know they're kind of doing both right now, but I think they're putting one foot in the water, but they're keeping one foot in Google's camp, and that kind of prohibits them. But okay, I'll try to keep up here. Alexander Ernst says, hello. Also, Samsung is announcing a new watch, which is already pretty good. I have the Active 2, and it's seriously great and underrated. I've tried them before, and there's usually not inherently much wrong with them. I just think the Apple Watch is better in terms of longevity and how watchOS behaves. And I don't know. I've just yet to find something that I enjoyed as much as the Apple Watch. I just prefer the digital crown over anything I've ever tried on a Galaxy Watch. And the activity rings system is just so much more simple and integrated than S Health or whatever the Samsung does. Did you send the same super chat twice, Alex? Also is announcing a new watch. Yeah, it's saying super chat twice. I guess thank you. I wish there was a... Oh, you retracted the message. I wish I could hit the refund button. YouTube doesn't have that, but if I could, I would just hit refund. Oh, well. Let's see. Skylar Kelsch has a theory here. He says, personally, I don't think other companies want to have an ecosystem like Apple's. I get the impression that Samsung and Google want their products to work with a wide range of other products. Yeah, I'm sure they do, but I don't think necessarily that just by wanting your products to work with a wide range of other products, that means that you can't build an ecosystem like Apple's. Like, Apple's is pretty locked down and closed in, but I don't think that's inherent. Like, just because you could, personally, I think you could still make a Google ecosystem of watch, phone, tablet, laptop, desktop, TV that's stronger than Apple's with better silicon and great optimized software. I think you could do all that and still let them work with third-party stuff. You wouldn't have to restrict the Pixel Watch from working with Samsung phones or the Galaxy Watches from working with Pixel phone. I don't think you would have to shut all that down, personally. I could be wrong. Maybe there's more to it than I realized, but... Oh, you wanted to donate 10 originally, but he sent 2. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Argos400 says, what are hopes for AirTag V2? You know, probably no one's going to agree with me on this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. I would much rather have a rechargeable AirTag, even if the battery life was worse. I don't think it would be, though. I know that everyone likes the replaceable batteries, and I get why they did it, because most people would rather have that. But, like, the bottom of the AirTag shape, let me pull it up here. The bottom of the AirTag is, like, the perfect curvature for the Apple Watch charge connector. It's like, it could not fit better, and I did it myself. I, like, dropped the AirTag on my Apple Watch charger, and it's magnetic, too. You know, it slaps on the back perfectly. And even if the battery life was cut in half, let's say it was 6 months instead of a year, that would still save me the step in the process of having to go out and buy a 2032 battery. It's not that they're expensive. I know that you can buy a 2032 battery for dirt cheap. I'm sure you could, and it's probably way easier for Apple to just say, use this basic 2032 battery instead of trying to ship Apple Watch chargers with every AirTag. I'm not suggesting that they switch all AirTags to be rechargeable. I'm just saying an optional add-on. It could even cost more. I wouldn't be that upset by. Just to say, like, I already have an Apple Watch charger. Let me recharge it, because I don't want to run the errand. I don't have a bunch of 2032 cells sitting around my house, and I don't want to have to go to a store or order one online. I don't want to have to fuss around with having to try and locate a cell, because if I have to do all that work personally, I think I would rather just let the AirTag die. That's probably what would end up happening, because that's what happened to, before the AirTags came out, that's what happened to my GeoTracker. I used it for a while, and then the battery died, and I was like, oh, then I'm going to get one of those cells, and whatever. I haven't lost that thing in a while, whatever. So I would much rather just take the AirTag and drop it on my Apple Watch charger once every 6 months than I would have to go out and buy a 2032 cell. I want a wallet AirTag. Yeah, that would be nice. There's been some third parties that have developed stuff like that. I appreciate having a, what's it called? A way to track your wallet down that's built into the Find My app. Technically, someone could just make a wallet with the Find My support built into it. You would just have to replace it, charge it in some way, shape, or form, however so often. But I would love new color options. I would like a black AirTag. That would be nice. Or I don't know. It just feels weird that there's like 6 iMac colors, but then the AirTag gets one color, or the MagSafe pack gets one color. But with a desktop that doesn't really get moved around ever and just sits on a desk all the time, we decide to give that like a million color options. I don't get it. Let's see. Yeah, please don't spam. That makes it more complicated for everyone. Alex says, react to the Samsung event because I like your funny commentary. Okay, thank you. I'll consider that. AirTags Gen 2 coming 2025. Yeah, I don't think they need to update them soon. Probably be a while before they need to update the game. Oh, another thing I'll throw on before I move on. I see your super chats, but I don't need this to be like a glossy stainless steel. This gets like really, really scratched up real easy. So I don't see the point in this being so shiny. I guess it looks kind of cool, but it's an AirTag. We're not going to look at this thing. So I wish Apple would switch that with something maybe that ages better. Maybe if it was made out of the same plastic that the MagSafe battery pack was made out of, which is a more matte frosted finish, and it's a lot more durable and it ages a lot better. Little detail, not a huge deal, but just something I noticed is that steel scratches up real easy. Overall, it's still an amazing product. I think it's an amazing deal for the price, and it works really, really well. I think it could not be more intuitive and simple to set up. It works fantastic. I just don't lose stuff enough for it to be worth it. So I reviewed mine, but I sold mine. A friend of mine, I was meeting up with a friend of mine, and I was showing it off to him, and I was like, yeah, I just reviewed this for the channel. I don't really plan on using it much, but I got it for my keys. And he was like, oh, my mom is losing stuff all the time. And it was like about to be Mother's Day. He was like, could I buy it off you? And I'll give it to her for Mother's Day. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I just sold it to him. But, okay, I'll catch up here. Senior Bell 67 says, do you find any value in mechanical watches anymore? Well, that would imply I ever saw value in mechanical watches. The short answer is no. I understand why some people kind of collect watches as like jewelry, and there's some nostalgia. I know people that like have inherited watches from their grandparents, and they're kind of like in the family thing, and I've got no problem with that. It's your life. If you want a normal mechanical watch that you don't have to charge and the battery lasts forever and ever, that's fine. I got no problem with it. But for me personally, I did not have any interest in watches until the Apple Watch was rumored. I started wearing a watch when the Apple Watch was picking up traction in Apple's leak community. I was kind of into the tech space, not super close yet, but it was rumored, and it was like Apple might be working on a wearable or a smartwatch of some kind. And I was like, okay, let me try wearing one. And once I tried wearing like a basic digital watch, I was like, yeah, I want to be able to respond to texts or check my email or ping my phone. I tried it out, but if it was not for the Apple Watch rumors, I would not have done it at all. I don't see much point in keeping a device on my wrist at all times just for the time, or even just for like a calculator or something. My phone can do that pretty well. And yeah, Rolexes are often a great investment. Like people buy them and they can sell them for more than they paid, or they can hold value. It's just like kind of like a piece of jewelry for some people, but I'm not into that type of investing. I would much rather just put it in the stock market, or put it towards a real estate property or something. I don't see the point in putting it in a watch myself, but I am only interested in this because of how it works within my ecosystem. Like, I love that it unlocks my Mac. I love that I can ping my iPhone if I don't know where it is. I love that I can check email or get a text message real quick at a glance. I don't have to pull my phone out of my pocket. If it was just the time and it did nothing else but the time, I don't mind just my phone. I'll just use my phone for the time. So I just don't put that much value in a watch that literally all it does is tell the time. I'm into the smartness of it. But we'll be talking more about watches later in the week. I have some videos planned about that. Did you sell your iPad Pro from 2021? I returned it. So, no. But I do not have it anymore, no. Where I getting this cheap iPad? Certified refurbished apple.com. I guess we started the stream with it, but some people are coming in. So anyway, $519 for the 2018 iPad Pro, which is way cheaper than the iPad Air and a far better product. 120 hertz Face ID, A12X chip, USB, quad speakers. And then if you want more RAM, this is $9 more than an iPad Air. This is only $89 more than an iPad Air, and it's got 4 times the storage, and it's got a better display, better biometrics. So link for all that, I'll throw in the chat one more time just if people want to find it. But either way, amazing deal. Why you brought it back? Because I was disappointed by it. I was unimpressed. I wanted iPadOS to do more, and after Quadruple UDC happened, I thought that iPadOS 15 was disappointing. I was like, it's in some ways worse than iPadOS 14. It was the first time I didn't actually want to update the OS on my iPad, and they're selling these $2,000 iPads with the M1 chip, which is insanely fast, and they have these Thunderbolt port and all this processing power, and you can't do anything with it. So I just didn't see the point. Your thoughts on the upcoming iPad Mini? I'm looking forward to get an Apple iPad as a first-time iPad user. Keep up the good show. Thank you, Alex. I think this, by far, is the most exciting iPad of the year. The Mini LED iPad Pro was underwhelming for me, and the software limited it so much that I saw no point in upgrading to it over my 2018 iPad Pro, because for what I use an iPad for, this covers it. And there's just so little differences year after year after year. Ever since 2018, they've still struggled to come up with a good reason for me to upgrade my iPad. And the software really could have changed things, but the software didn't do it for me. It's just not capable of taking advantage of any of the hardware. I would have used the M1 iPad Pro the exact same way I used my 2018 iPad Pro. It wouldn't really have changed anything. So there was no point in keeping it, really. But yeah, Phone Up says, I just got the 2018 iPad Pro and it's amazing. See, it's 3 years later. It's almost 3 years old now, and it's still unmatched in the Android market, and also just especially now for the value you can get out of them. If you're buying them refurbished from Apple, that comes with a brand new battery, a brand new case, and it's under $700. I'd love to find an Android tablet that does that well. Let's see. A theory of mine is that sheep droids brag about they're not in a cage like us. Maybe Android users don't want an ecosystem. Sure, some people don't want one, but the ecosystem isn't so much about locking you in. It's more about providing advantages that you couldn't get otherwise. Things just work well together, like the AirDrop or iMessage working across all the devices, and I don't see it as a downside. The way I see it is it's a walled garden, but what's outside the garden is a desolate wasteland. It's if what I can get outside of the garden is not better than inside the garden, then I'll stay in the walled garden, That's how I see it. How long do you think it will be until the A12X will be too slow? Easily many, many years. The A12X chip in terms of raw CPU and GPU speed is pretty on par with the A14 chip. They're pretty neck and neck. One is not much faster than the other. Kind of just ends up being the use case which one ends up being faster. Sometimes A12X is higher, sometimes A14 is higher. They're pretty close. I would say 2018 iPad Pros are still future-proofed for probably another 5 years, because the iPad Air 2 is getting 8 years of software support, and Apple Silicon was a lot slower back then. So far, Apple has shown no signs in newer Apple Silicon getting less support than older. It's the opposite. The newer the Apple Silicon is, the more years of support it gets. So if that's the case, I could easily see the A12X chip lasting another 5 to 7 years. I don't think only the A14 chip can last another 7 years. I bet A12X could, especially if they're providing... Let me find the compatibility list of iPadOS. It's going back really far, and the iPad Air 2 chip is not really that amazing. It was okay. It was good for the time. But A12X, they have still barely done anything with the software to take advantage of well, this is not iPadOS 15, but I know it's all the same. This is how many iPads can run the latest version of iPadOS. All the way back here. The Mini 4 really has an A8 chip. which I'll be honest, the A8 chip was not that big a deal, but A12X was. A12X was like a monumental leap over A10X, and there's still a ton of, most laptops are not that fast. So I could see even you buying a certified refurbished iPad Pro today, and it still end up lasting you 5 to 7 years. Will iPad mini get the M1? Probably not. It's rumored to get either the A14 or A15. Probably A15. But I do think it's the first time they're bringing like the squared off 2018 iPad Pro design to a smaller footprint, which is exciting. And I really, really loved the iPad mini 5 last time I tried it out. It's just a really comfortable form factor, and you still get all the advantages of iPad OS in this really small, affordable tablet. And I just really enjoyed it. Like, I could type with both thumbs, even in landscape mode, and you can still do the split screen thing, but it's just really compact. So I'm really excited for the iPad mini 6. I definitely want to try it out. The only thing that would probably prevent it from replacing my iPad Pro is 120 hertz and Face ID, which are fairly important to me. I do use those regularly, and I do appreciate those features, so that would prevent me from switching to it, but I do think it's going to be an amazing deal. Let's see. I think M1 iPads are going to get better by next year. Well, let's hope they don't get worse. I really hope so. Do you think Apple will increase the telephoto zoom above 2.5x for the 13 Pro/Max? I'm hoping they don't disregard the telephoto until they add periscope. I'm worried that might be the scenario. Not sure. I have not heard that the telephoto lens is going to be much better, but it should. I agree. They should go further than that. Argo says, would you be interested in an Apple Ring, an iRing? I don't know. I've seen a few concepts like that floating around, but I already wear my wedding ring. It doesn't do anything, but, you know, that's not there for tech purposes. That's there because I love my wife. But I don't know what it would do. You would have to pitch to me what it would do that I could get interested in. What's your wish list for... Ray Day asks, what's your wish list for AirPods Pro Generation 2? From the beginning, my wish list for all AirPods has been more colors. I would like a black pair of AirPods. That would be great. I would like a more matte frosted finish over glossy. Of course, the basics, you know, better audio quality, better battery life. I wouldn't mind if they ditched Lightning. Most people would probably be annoyed by this, so I get why they won't do it. But if you're asking me personally, I never use the Lightning connector on this. I always charge it inductively. So either switch it to USB-C or go all in on wireless charging. I wouldn't mind that. If removing this allows you to fit a... You know, the Lightning connector probably takes up a lot of space on a device this small. So if you were able to remove the Lightning connector on here and increase the battery capacity on the inside by a healthy margin, I would say that'd be worth it to me. I know a lot of people don't like inductive charging their AirPods, though, so they probably won't do that. But if it was just up to me and no one else, I'd be like, yeah, just ditch the port. We got to get rid of Lightning. Let's see. Apple House would be nice. Apple Obsessed. Maybe that's something they can compete with Tesla on if Apple Car doesn't work. Yeah, I think a lot of people keep imagining that without thinking of how complex it is to build your own houses. A whole house. There's not a whole lot you can do with a smart house. It's probably easier to just sell smart home accessories. Let's see. If I already have an iPad, but it's old but still supported, would you rather upgrade or get an M1 MacBook Air? I guess it depends on what you use it for. If you could see yourself using the Mac for software that's not available on the iPad, then I guess get another good example of certified refurbished is the MacBook Air. If we go, let me find it here. There's been some really good deals on MacBook Airs and certified refurbished. Again, I highly recommend it because it's practically new. $850. And yeah, they include all the accessories. They highly rigorous refurbishment process. $850 for an M1 MacBook Air, I'd say, is a pretty good deal. But the only reason I would go with this over an iPad is if there's some type of software that you can't get on the iPad that you need. I mean, I use a Mac every day because there's software that the iPad doesn't have. But if you're just using it for general stuff like watching videos or social media or reading email, that type of thing, the iPad's much more fun. The iPads are good at the basics. They always have been, and they probably always will be. So if it's more than the base, let's see. Do you think that a Mac Mini and the iPad Pro 2020 would be a good combo refurbished? Yeah. Yeah, there's some refurbished M1 Mac Minis, too. The M1 chip is really fast, so the fact that you can get a hold of one for under $600 is kind of crazy. How would you feel if Apple started selling smart home stuff? Yeah, I've advocated for that in the past. I think it's a great idea. It's already far too complicated with all the different smart home accessories there are out there with smart sockets and bulbs and smart accessories that you have to download this other app and you got to try to set it up through HomeKit and you got to line up the code just right. If Apple made their own smart accessories, you could just like turn them on, provide power to them, and then it just has the little W1 chip style pairing method like AirPods do. It just pop up connect and then it automatically adds it to your smart home. I think that would be much easier than having to go through the third-party process and having to download a separate app and have a different email. They've tried to do these things that don't require you to get a separate app, but they usually don't work very well, in my experience. Trying to line up the QR code, and then the QR code doesn't understand, and it's not compatible and that type of thing. It's just, I've had a lot of issues with it, which is somewhat annoying. But do you think Space Gray Apple mouse or keyboard price will boom? I don't think so. Maybe slightly, but no, don't buy into it thinking it's the next cryptocurrency that's going to take off soon. I've been stocking up on all those Space Gray accessories. I'm going to sell them 40 years from now for millions of dollars because they'll be so rare. Nah, they mass produce them at such a large scale. They're not that rare. Even if they stop making them, they're not that rare. Drew, stop telling everyone about certified refurbished. They're all going to sell out now. I doubt it. They're all still here. They've been there for like a good day or two. They've still had the iPads available, which is really good. So those are, I think, the best value. If you're in the market for an iPad, I would highly, highly recommend getting a refurbished 11-inch iPad Pro from 2018 for $500. That's just, you can't beat that. Let's see. I think for now, it's not a good idea to go for refurbished Mac since there's a back-to-school deal where you can get free AirPods with your Mac purchase, and it's a better value than refurbished. I'm sorry. I'd rather have money than AirPods, especially given a lot of us already have AirPods. Maybe if you don't have AirPods and you really, really want them, then get the back-to-school deal. But again, that only applies towards education, not everybody. So certified refurbished, you don't have to be a student to get that. Literally anybody can get that. But you can buy those AirPods and try to sell them. But if you're not, certified reseller, you're probably not going to get as good. You're not going to get as good a return as Apple's going to get. So you probably wouldn't be able to sell your AirPods for $160. So yeah, I don't think I agree with that unless you're just really interested in getting AirPods and you, for some reason, haven't got them yet. The Mad Kazi says, is there a difference between the 2020 and 2021 iPad Air? No, they're the same product. There's no changes. The same product. Let's see. Why Mike says, I went through the whole Google pairing process when setting up a smart plug only to find out after the whole pairing escapade that the Wi-Fi didn't reach that far. Oof, that's not fun. You can purchase from the education website and they don't check for your student ID. I know you can, but you're not supposed to or whatever, but you technically can. But certified refurbished, it's not intended at least for just education. That's for everyone. Let's see. Would you recommend people to wait for the next 11-inch iPad Pro because of it probably getting a mini LED display? I personally, after using mini LED, you really only notice a difference in side-by-sides. Like, the dynamic range is not as big a leap as it is to LCD to OLED. It's like a half step. The contrast ratio is not as drastic as the Super Retina XDR displays on OLED. I don't think the next one is coming that soon. I think if you're gonna wait for the 11-inch model, you're gonna be waiting for a long time. Probably looking at end of next year when we're gonna get another iPad Pro. So you've probably got over a year to wait, and you can get an 11-inch model. The main problem is after trying mini LED, I don't see it as that crucial of a feature. I don't think it's that big a deal breaker. It's like slightly better, but you get comfortable and you get used to liquid retina so easily. It's still an amazing display. It's still 120 hertz and the pixel density's good and all that, and it still gets plenty bright. So I don't have that. I don't take that big an issue. I don't think it's worth the extra money, and I don't think it's worth the wait. Like, it's an improvement, which is good. It's a step in the right direction. I'm not saying they shouldn't have made a mini LED iPad. It's good, but it's just not that much better over the prices of these certified refurbished iPads, which have brand new batteries and brand new chassis. So they're practically new. So I don't think so. Daniel Hadi says, for anyone wondering about 2018 Pro, I've been using my 12.9 inch and 2018 Pro base model for a year now, and it works flawlessly. I highly recommend it. And it's refurbished. So he bought his refurbished, and he's still really happy with it. How about new MacBook Pro leaks, if you saw any? I haven't seen much that I haven't already talked about, other than, it's exciting. I'm kind of getting, as time goes on, I get more and more pumped because I think about, me and my wife are planning more trips and we're going to be out and about a bit more than we have in the past couple years. So I'm leaning more towards getting a MacBook Pro, so that has me excited to try out M1X chip. My mind is having a hard time wrapping around how are they going to get MagSafe back on these things and still have USB-C. I don't know, but the performance of the M1X combined with the affordable, I'm hoping it gets more affordable, but I'm not sure. But just overall, it sounds like an amazing package with the power efficiency and the giant battery in the 16-inch MacBook Pro. I think it's going to be pretty amazing. Used chip though, D-Wall. No one using their iPad Pros is complaining about the clock speed. For the past 3 or 4 years, all the iPad Pros have had overkill performance and no software on the hardware that actually takes advantage of it. They literally put in A12X and M1 chips in these iPads just so that they can age really well. That's the thing. Thank you for the super chat. Nerman says, just concerned, hope you're informed your doc about neck. Yes, I have. I know. Any tiny issue you guys have seen with my face, my hair, my body, trust me, I see it long before you guys do. And yes, I have a dermatologist that I see regularly because of my genetic skin condition. And I had him look directly at this because a lot of people were convinced, long before you guys were, a lot of people were convinced this was cancerous. He checked it out. It's not cancerous. It's just a cyst. So I don't enjoy talking about my body parts, but yes, I've had it looked into by professionals. We're fine. But I appreciate the concern. Thank you for looking out for me. But just keep in mind, I've probably seen and detect things long before you guys do. What would find my display if an AirTag was in space? Pretending there's GPS in space, even if there isn't. AirTags don't use GPS, so I don't think that. It would probably just show wherever the AirTag was last connected to your phone. But I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't think it tracks altitude that much. And it has to ping other Apple devices. I'm pretty sure location services with computers get all screwed up as soon as you go into space. So, Mike says, I hope you've informed your doctor about that dank haircut, friend. I did. I'm actually going to see my dermatologist later this week. It's that time of the year again. Oh, yes. My 2018 iPad Pro is just so slow. Yeah, every single iPad Pro ever since even 2017. My wife still uses the 2017 iPad Pro, and she's had no issues with the CPU speed, despite it having an A10X and it being... It's over 4 years old now, right? Yeah, it came out in June of 17, so we're in August now. So it's over 4 years old, and it still works flawlessly. There's no CPU problems. I would not worry about a used CPU in an iPad. Unless Apple starts launching some kind of Final Cut and Logic, highly advanced pro-class software for the iPad, then there's really no reason to get worried about the chip. Let's see. Anyone looking for a keyboard case for iPad Pro, please at least consider the Logitech Combo Touch. I have one for my iPad Pro and absolutely love it. Actually feels like a case. Yeah, I think I've heard of that one. I haven't got a chance to try it, but I've heard good things about it. Everyone who bought it seems to have enjoyed it. I sent the question to Tim Cook with the AirTag, and I'm also sending to Apple Park. Yeah, I bet after that one guy on YouTube sent an AirTag to Apple, now there's probably going to be like 1 million people sending AirTags to Apple. They're like, oh my God, we can't respond to every single one of these, please. What's one feature you wish the iPad Pros had? macOS. That would be nice, a dual boot option. Because then you wouldn't need to buy a MacBook and an iPad. You could just buy an iPad. And it's not so much a money-saving thing. It's more of a product simplicity thing. I would much rather take one product that can do a bunch of things than I would take two products. I like traveling lighter. There's a reason laptops exist. It's so that people don't have to buy desktops for every room they go in. I never understood that argument. People kept saying, with the iPads running macOS and that type of thing, it was like, just get a Mac or just get it. It was like, with that logic of saying, well, if you want macOS, just buy a Mac. It's like, well, the Mac doesn't have the hardware that the iPads do, and I want a product that can do both. With that logic, Apple shouldn't make laptops, because you could say Apple would make way more money if they didn't sell laptops and then you had to buy desktops for every room. If you want to use macOS in bed, you got to buy an iMac for the bedroom. You got to buy Mac for work. You got to buy a Mac for home. Laptop eats into desktop sales. If Apple starts selling laptops, then people won't need to buy as many desktops. But they're still selling laptops. So I don't want Apple to merge them. I know Apple's not going to merge them. I wasn't suggesting that. I'm saying Apple should let you dual boot iPad OS or Mac OS, whichever you prefer. The same way you can dual boot Windows on a Mac. Apple's not trying to merge Mac OS and Windows, but they do let you boot into both. I know that Apple Silicon doesn't let you quite yet, but Apple has said that they're open to it. It's just on Microsoft to optimize for it. It's not that Apple's inherently against it. Divot says, hey, Drew, you thinking of buying a maxed out MacBook Pro 16-inch M1X or maxed out Mac Mini? I'm still undecided. It's going to depend on how good the M1X chip is. But me and my wife are talking more about taking trips and vacations and stuff and thinking about doing more long-term, because we have a lot of family that are far away from us now. You know, that's not merging RM projects. Just because you let Windows 10 boot up on a Mac, are you merging Windows with Mac OS? No. That's called a dual boot option. You can do the same thing on the iPad. I don't get what that's not merging to have options. Anyway, since we're talking about traveling more, I'm getting more and more tempted by the M1X MacBook Pro, but I think it'll depend on how good the M1X chip is. If it's like substantially miles better than my iMac Pro, then I'd probably get a MacBook, but if it's marginally better, I'll probably wait and see how fast the Mac Pro can get. I'm not sure. We'll see. Money is the reason they haven't added macOS to iPad, unfortunately. I don't think it's a good reason. I'm sure there might be some truth to that, but I think if you required an iPad Pro and said that only Pro iPads can dual boot into macOS, then you would have way more people buying iPad Pros. And iPad Pros with M1 chips, objectively, it's not even a discussion, they objectively cost more than Macs with M1 chips. You can upsell people on more stuff. You can upsell people on 5G. It just costs way more to get an iPad Pro. You could also make them require a Magic Keyboard case. So you can't dual boot into macOS unless you have a keyboard and trackpad attached to it. People would be spending far more money on iPads, and they wouldn't eat into Mac sales because people who want iPads and Macs are still going to buy M1X Macs. The only Macs that the iPad Pro would be competing with are other M1 Macs, which are all cheaper. So Apple is okay with cannibalizing their own hardware if they can make more money on you, and I think if they allowed dual booting on the iPad, they would make more money off you. It's like iPhone cannibalizes iPod. That doesn't stop them from selling it, but iPods cost more. iPhones cost more than iPods, so they did it. It's the same thing with the iPads to me. Mac doesn't need to be optimized for touch. If like I'm putting Sidecar on my iPad right now, I have Mac OS displaying on my iPad, and guess what? Touchscreen is deactivated. So they're clearly okay with you using your iPad in a particular format that means you can't touch and interact with the display. That's how Sidecar has worked for years. If you dual boot into Mac OS mode, okay, touch doesn't work. You just got to use the keyboard and trackpad. I'm not saying everyone has to use that feature. I'm just saying I would use that feature, and a ton of people would utilize it, in my opinion. Oh boy, we're getting into this subject. Let me address Ray Day's super chat, but I'll rant all day on this one. I've heard all the complaints on this subject. My boyfriend still uses the 2017 iPad Pro 2, and it works great for him, but he might replace it at some point because he dropped it often, and now it restarts randomly. Yikes. I guess it doesn't work great for him. But yeah, if you drop it, that might happen. Thank you, Ray Day. Let's see. Do you not feel like that would cause more problems than it fixes? I imagine macOS on iPads would require a lot of optimization and work to fit a touch interface. No, Jim Jam, I'm saying you just turn off the touchscreen. That's how Sidecar works now. Sidecar's been out for years, and when you start using macOS on your iPad's display, the touchscreen just doesn't work. It's that simple. You could just say, okay, as a backdoor option, I'm not even suggesting that dual booting macOS is the default. Like iPad Pro right out of the box, sure, it runs iPadOS. It's all simple, it's all optimized, it's clean, it's user-friendly for the average person. But if you're a pro, if you're the type of person to buy an iPad Pro because it has an M1 chip, it has Thunderbolt, it has all these crazy new specs and mini LED, you're more than the average consumer at that point, then have an option in settings that says, please allow me to dual boot, reboot the iPad, go to macOS mode, and then you can use it like a Mac. You can use Final Cut. You can use Logic. You can use OBS. You can do everything a Mac can. You had to spend about as much as a Mac does. So Apple's not losing out on any sales. In fact, they're upselling you on more things. I think that by not providing Pro functionality and by not giving it Pro software, Apple is making less money because there's a ton of people like me and people in the chat. They see no reason to update their iPad line. What's the reason Ray Day's boyfriend should upgrade his iPad Pro? There's a few hardware tricks here and there, but people who bought iPad Pros like I did back in 2018, there's so little reasons to upgrade. They have not taken advantage of any of that silicon or any of that hardware. It's just not gotten much better. So why bother? And macOS already runs off of the M1 chip on the MacBook Air, so it would not take much optimization. They're putting the same chips in iPads as they are as Macs, so it's not like they would have to retool macOS to run on it. No, it's all Apple silicon at this point. Yeah, it's like people are going to be more like Scott and say, update my YouTube machine for another $800. Nah, it's like, if it's just going to be a media consumption device, people aren't going to upgrade it. If you were actually giving it Pro functionality and Pro software to take advantage of, even if it was expensive, people would see a point in upgrading. I think Apple would see far more revenue in the iPad line, and I don't think it would hurt Mac sales much because people would be spending more. They'd be like, oh, so you're telling me I can buy one product, granted, it's like $2,000 once you factor in the cellular and the storage and the keyboard. The iPad Pro is objectively far more expensive in terms of specs, but at least there's a way I can buy one product that does everything. It does all the great things an iPad can and all the great things a Mac can, one product. People would buy that. Right now, people just don't see a point in upgrading their YouTube machine. So I don't think it's a money problem. What do you think of Apple Watch SE still great in 2021, even after the Apple Watch 7? Yeah, I think there's a good chance the SE could get a price reduction. That would make it even better. But yeah, I still to this day, I showed off the unlock my iPhone while wearing a mask thing to someone, and they were like, whoa, that's really cool. I want to get an Apple Watch. And I was like, get the SE. I was like, you don't need a 6. There's not a good... I told them, like, the 6 has the ECG, and it has an always-on display, but you're never going to use those. And they were like, okay, I'll get an SE. So it's still a great buy. The Unreal Cousin says you can upsell people on things on a Mac like storage. Yeah, same as iPad. iPad, you can upsell people more because all Macs come with 256 gigs of storage, whereas the iPad Pros come with 128 gigs of storage. So it's even easier to upsell people on iPads. You can't upsell people on Mac to get an Apple Pencil or a Magic Keyboard case that's $350. You can't push that. It all comes in one package. And it has high storage and high RAM built in already. And there's no cellular option either. You can get an M1 MacBook Pro for $3,000. That's more than an iPad. Yeah, but you have to compare apples to apples. The iPad... Okay, I'll walk you through this. Here we go. So in order to get an iPad that would be comparable to a Mac, maxed out with a MacBook Pro. This is the use case they always demonstrated it with the keyboard case, and they even build this into the checkout option here. So I'm not even doing much crazy. If I'm in the market for an iPad Pro, okay, I want a ton of storage. I want to max it out. I just want every option Apple allows for that's hardware. We're not talking throwing in software. Space gray, 2 terabytes. Yeah, we want the 5G. We don't need the engraving because that doesn't make a difference. But do we want to add an Apple Pencil? Heck yeah, we need the Apple Pencil. We'll throw that in. It's right in the checkout page. Do we want a keyboard? Yeah, because you would need that to run macOS. So yeah, we're going to add a keyboard to this as well. Now, maxed out $2,900 for all of these things put together. I'm sure once you factor in tax, it's probably around $3,000. M1 MacBook Pro, I don't believe gets that high. Let me pull it up here. But I'm okay with Apple restricting it to only higher tiers. I'm not suggesting they let you boot macOS on your $300 iPad. I don't mean that, but you can up people on RAM, you can up people on storage, but that's it. All this is software based. That's not hardware. This is maxed out at $2,300 for the M1 MacBook Pro. So overall, Apple could get more money out of you by upselling you on iPad Pro features than they could a MacBook Pro. That's objectively less. It's like substantially less, too. It's probably like $500 less than maxing out an iPad Pro. Because I'm okay with them saying you need the keyboard case for it to work. Let's see. I don't know how you can get an M1 MacBook Pro for $3,000, though. What options were you plugging in? Okay, Ryan Fraley says, with X55 Qualcomm baseband on iPad, why not also add that to the Air and Pro MacBooks for 5G? I don't understand why they've taken so long. Maybe it's just because MacBook battery lives haven't been good for years, but now that they're switching to Apple Silicon, that's a great question. I am very confused as to why MacBooks can't get cellular options, but iPads do. It's bizarre. I really think they should. Other laptops have done it, so I don't get it. Unreal Cousin says, iPad Pro is just not the right hardware for macOS. It has a touchscreen, no keyboard by default, smaller screen and a pencil. That's not for macOS. Yeah, but you're giving it Mac hardware. You're giving it a keyboard and mouse, an M1 chip, and a display in USB-C, and a biometric designed by Apple. That's everything you need to make an M1 Mac. iPad has all the hardware for it. Just because it has a touchscreen doesn't mean you have to use it. Like I'm saying, provide the option. Macs are not Windows machines, but Apple was fine with them running Windows for years, and they still are. They allow parallels, and they allow dual booting and boot camp, and that kind of thing. Macs were not built for Windows, but they can run them, and I think iPads arguably would be built for running Mac OS. Sure that the touchscreen would have to be deactivated, but what I'm saying is the iPad could do software-wise all the things a Mac could, but because iPad OS sucks so much, they won't let it. To me, it's just ridiculous that Apple's own video codec. Apple designed their own video format optimized by them for their Macs, but because the iPad runs iPad OS, it can't support that. But they give it all this crazy hardware. They give it the M1 chip, they give it Thunderbolt, they give it Mini LED. But can you do anything with that power other than watch YouTube videos and some basic photo editing here and there? The iPad can do the basics, I'll agree. You can do some LumaFusion editing, you can do some photo editing, you can use a watered-down version of Photoshop. But overall, it's still going to be fundamentally limited by the OS. It's not the hardware that's limiting it from being a MacBook replacement. The iPad's been capable of covering the basic light video editing, basic photo editing. Since 2015, it's been able to do that. It just hasn't grown past that over the past 5-6 years. It's not grown anywhere beyond the basic stuff, but if you want more professional, you need to get a Mac. Where what I'm saying is the iPad could do more. The iPad could become a MacBook replacement if the software allowed it to. But because Apple's stubborn, they don't want it to be able to do that. Let's see. iPad OS is just very limited by the software being very closed off, preventing third-party downloads. Well, you can go through the App Store. I don't think it's a third-party download thing, but it's being closed off from Apple's own software. You don't even have to get into the third-party argument. You don't have to say it's closed off from third-party download. Mac OS, in my opinion, is being fully utilized by Apple's own software, like Xcode and Logic and Final Cut. That's what a lot of pros use. And they're intentionally leaving that type of stuff off the iPad, even though it could totally run it. It has identical hardware, which is ridiculous to me. Chris Norton says, my ex was blind and her iPhone voiceover helped her, and I used some features of voiceover. Oh, that's cool. I'm glad they have that for you. Khalil Mirza says, do you think remote desktop on the iPad to use macOS is good enough, or is that not really ideal because of the latency in the input? Well, it's not good enough to justify getting an iPad, because you can do that with any iPad and it's not really running off of it. That's just turning the iPad into an external monitor, which is what I'm doing with Sidecar. It's the idea would be, if the iPad could dual boot, was that you could spend all of your money on a $3,000 product, so it's very expensive, but it would be able to do everything a Mac can and everything an iPad can by one product. And if you're doing the remote desktop viewing thing, that's not really one product. You're just piggybacking off of a Mac, using it from your iPad, but it's not on the iPad. Doesn't really fix the problem, because the idea with the iPad is you can wrap it up, take it with you, and the latency obviously is going to be an issue, and it's not actually running. You can only get so far with that. If it was like Boot Camp, you wouldn't be switching between iPadOS and macOS, so it wouldn't really give you any benefits of the iPad. You could just turn it off and boot it back into iPadOS when you want to. The M1 chip is fast. You can boot up very quickly. Again, all the people who are against this option should also be against Boot Camp, which people bragged about and loved about Intel Macs for years. The idea that, if you're using macOS for certain things, you get the advantages of macOS, and then, okay, I like iPad, I like Microsoft, because there's certain third-party software that only works for Windows, so I'm just going to restart the computer and boot it back into Windows mode. You get the advantages of both. I don't see why just the option. I'm not saying the requirement. Not everyone has to use the feature if you don't want to. Why is everyone so against the option of it? Even if it's not ideal, even if you can't use the touchscreen in that configuration, why are you against allowing people the option? I don't see the argument. Would you be okay if it was like a $200 or $100 add-on to add macOS, similar to Logic and Final Cut? Just if it was possible, yeah. That's not ideal. I mean, obviously it'd be better if it didn't cost extra, but all I'm saying is, why just a possible way, I don't care how much it costs, even if it costs $5,000, is there just some way, for the sake of traveling efficiency and simplicity of our ecosystem, that we could create one product that works with the Apple Pencil, that has Face ID, that has Mini LED, that has cellular, that can also run Final Cut, Logic, Xcode, that could do all the things my Mac could do OBS, like this setup I'm doing right now with OBS. I could not do this on my iPad. The iPad has the hardware for it. It's got the silicon, it's got the GPU, it's got the CPU, it's got the cameras, it's got the microphones, it's got the USB-C input. I could physically, the hardware is there for all of this to be powered by an iPad, but Apple's like, nah. Buy a Mac, though. It's literally just a software wall preventing the iPad from becoming more. So if they put it behind a paywall, or they put it on a high list, I'd be even fine if they said something like, you have to get a 16 gigs of RAM option. They're like, okay, look, if we're going to do dual booting, we're going to have to put 2 operating systems on one product. That's going to take up too much space. So you can only do it if you buy a 1 terabyte iPad Pro or more. That's the only way you can do it. I'd be like, fine. At least there's a way. We can start with there being a way to do it, and then later on down the road, we can work on a cheaper way to do it. But as of right now, the reason I'm promoting 2018 and 2020 iPad Pros for being cheap is that there's really, in iPadOS's current state, there's no reason to get iPads that are much more than $1,000. And yet Apple is selling $2,000 iPads. There's no point. Like, you don't need that much insane hardware on a device that's just running iPadOS. So I don't agree with. I haven't seen a good argument yet, other than just Apple's arrogance in their and how they view the iPad. Paul Romero, thank you for the super chat. I got the M1 12-inch iPad Pro for gaming purposes using LTE on xCloud, but the lag is still horrible. Kind of proves my point right there. Paul's like, yeah, I want to get that 5G so I can game on xCloud. No, it doesn't work. It's you spend all that money and it's like, yeah, it wasn't worth it. Divid says, I think best thing for both customer and Apple is built two in one, but they will not because it's a $2.4 trillion company. They always look for making new products because this shows company's innovation. I just don't think Apple would lose more money personally. I think what you're going to have happen is people buying more Macs, which are cheaper than iPads. The most common scenario I run into, I know that there's some tech people that will buy iPads and Macs, but I think those people would still do that. I don't think that just because the iPad would have a dual boot option, I don't think they would stop, because we're not talking about giving the iPad an M1X chip. The people who buy both are the type of people that are going to buy M1X MacBook Pro or M1X Mac Mini and also buy an iPad Pro. Those people are going to buy maxed out whatever. Those people I don't think are going to change their mind because they're like, well, iPad is good and it can do macOS, but this MacBook does it way better. Also, the Macs still have headphone jacks. iPad Pro doesn't have a headphone jack, so you'd be like, well, okay, iPad Pro can do macOS type stuff now, but I still want the headphone jack, or I want more than one USB-C port. iPad Pro is still limited to one Type-C port, so there are still... iPad Pro starts at $1,100 with 128 gigs. MacBook Air starts at $1,000 for 256 gigs. So there's still a bunch of reasons to buy other Macs. I don't think dual booting would completely kill off Macs in any way. There would still be a bunch of reasons to buy a MacBook Air over an iPad Pro, even if the dual booting was a thing. So I don't think it's a money argument that makes sense to me. And I also think it's stupid to say someone shouldn't do something because the product would be too good. We're going to stop making that because it would be so amazing. Like, why would we not? Why would we hesitate on this? Don't release that product. It's too good. It would be so amazing. We can't do it. It's like, I don't care what it costs. If it's so amazing and nothing else is like it, just make it expensive. Just make it possible at least. Why not give us the option of using a headphone jack? I've been making that argument for years. Well, Apple got rid of the jack and used that space towards battery and selling wireless headphones, which I do believe are the future. I think wireless headphones have gotten cheap enough and reliable enough that keeping around the headphone jack for phones that you're not doing all of your audio file mixing on your smartphone, okay? You're not... Some people like high bitrate audio on the iPhone, but I think it's a fairly small piece of the market. And iPhone sales have done well, so I think the average consumer market has spoken pretty clearly that we don't need headphone jacks anymore. If they did, the phones with headphone jacks would be selling a lot better, but they don't. Won't software support get really less messed up? Like, what if a certain iPad could still support the newest iPad OS but couldn't support the newest Mac OS since iPad OS is simpler? It wouldn't mess up. Mac OS already runs on the M1 chip. How many different ways do I have to say that? They have whole Mac OS now, fully fledged Mac OS that works flawlessly on the Mac Mini, MacBook Air, fanless MacBook Air. Same silicon, same chip, same architecture. If they made Mac's touchscreen, the iPads would not sell. No, because I think most of the iPads that are selling are sub $600, and most Macs are over $1,000. So I don't think they would stop selling. Yeah, wireless headphones isn't the future; they're the present. Yeah, exactly. Especially now that here's a pair of headphones. If you guys are like, I want to get wireless headphones, but they're so expensive. Here's something I'll give you another shout out for. There's a pair of pretty impressive wireless headphones that I've seen a lot of people say nice things about. It's $50, and guess what? It charges via USB-C. They're called Beats Flex, and they're Bluetooth, and they have the W1 pairing method and all that. So you just turn them on, and they show up real quickly, and they support AirPlay and stuff. They come in multiple color options, and from what I've read, they sound pretty good. People were impressed with the sound quality, and they work better in the USB-C ecosystem, which I love. I wish AirPods had USB-C, but I've heard good things about them. $50. pretty dang cheap, and they're straight from Apple, so there's something I'll recommend. I just think there's a lot of money. Apple could make a ton more money if they gave the iPad Pro more functionality, and it would not cannibalize the Mac sales, and it would give iPad Pro users a reason to upgrade. Right now, Apple's going to be stuck in this rut for years where they're literally stuck in where so many people just don't see the point in upgrading their iPad Pro. There's people like Scott, and I'm sure Mike, everyone doesn't see a point in upgrading their iPad, but if the iPad was getting more functional, more professional software that could do more that the older iPads can't, because you could say, well, now we have the M1 chip in there, so we can let it run Mac OS because the M1 chip is a Mac chip. I think there's nothing but benefits, really. Makes the iPad more capable. You would get way more people spending more money. Like, Apple could have got me to spend $3,000 on a new iPad, basically. Maybe I'd reuse my keyboard case, so maybe it'd be more like $2,300. But instead, because of their choices of iPad OS, just software, I've spent no money on a new iPad this year. That's money lost, in my opinion. That could have been spent by people that are like, oh, I could get more out of it. Yeah, Scott says, I wanted to upgrade my iPad this year. I was ready to. Me too. I was kind of prepared. I was thinking, this is the year Apple's finally bragging about RAM options on the iPad. They're bragging about using the same chip as a Mac. I was like, something's cooking. They must have something prepared for a quadruple UDC. Mike says, I don't want to carry around my iMac if it's a touchscreen. I'd rather carry a very thin iPad. Exactly. It's just such a shame because the iPad hardware is fantastic. iPad hardware is probably the best in the whole ecosystem. You got the high refresh rate, the best version of Face ID that works in more than one direction. You've got mini LED. You've got the great dynamic range and the high refresh rate. You've got Thunderbolt. You've got the fastest Apple Silicon in the world. You've got great cameras. You've got Center Stage, which was a lot of fun. And yet you can't really do much more with it than media consumption and some basic photo and video editing. I don't get it. There needs to be growth, and I feel like iPad hasn't had much growth. It's just had like little nifty tips and tricks here and there. Quick notes. That's all we've gotten out of iPad OS in the past couple of years. It's like, yeah, you can scribble the pencil here and there. Do you think Apple will bring the chamber cooling for the next iPhone? Because mine is kind of hot while multitasking. Maybe they should, but I don't think they will. I think we would have heard about that by now. If you want a Mac with a touchscreen, get one with a touch bar. No, that's not what I want. That's different. I mean, I love the touch bar. You say that, but that's not what I mean. I actually don't want a Mac with a touchscreen. I think people misunderstand my argument. I don't think Mac OS is optimized for touch, and I don't think it ever needs to be. I think it's perfectly fine. Some people freak out about this. They're like, it's not, Mac OS isn't touch friendly. But I don't think it's that big a deal to make a device that running a certain operating system is optimized for touch, but it can also reboot into a keyboard and mouse optimized user interface that has more professional grade software. And I think that would go a lot faster than trying to slowly iterate on iPad OS to give it more Mac OS features. That's going to take forever. It's taken them years just to give the iPad very, very basic things. So I would love for all of my Mac OS features to just suddenly get optimized and built into iPad OS, but I just don't see that happening. It's been out for 11 years, and it's still not happening. We have heard about chamber cooling. There was a rumor a few months ago. Oh, really? Okay. I didn't hear about that one, but I don't know. I just think Apple is probably just going to let them overheat, knowing Apple. No, the Apple's logic would just be A15 chip should be more efficient. We just got to get it to run cooler. You are more productive with a Windows XP laptop than with an iPad? It depends on what you're doing. I would still argue iPad OS is a fun operating system. It's not very professional grade, but it's much more fun to use for basic stuff between like email, social media, YouTube, communicating with people, FaceTiming. Like, I still think it's way better of a consumer product. Like, I don't have anything wrong with iPad OS on everything iPad Air and cheaper. Nothing wrong with iPad OS on the iPad mini, the budget iPad, iPad Air. iPad OS is perfectly fine for all those products. But I'm more so complaining about the Pros. They don't really have a purpose if we're going to make cheaper iPads that look like Pros, like the iPad Air and the iPad Mini 6. It's going to look like an iPad Pro, but cheaper. If we're going to make the rest of the lineup have no home button and USB-C and slim bezels, then the Pros need to have something going for them. And I think it should be a little bit more than just 120 hertz and Face ID and center stage. It looks touch-friendly to me, but makes no sense. If they wanted to make touchscreen Macs, I'd be okay with it if they added it for a complete reason and not just Mac has touch now. Yay, stop complaining now, tech audience. Yeah, there would need to be a good functional reason for the Mac to have touchscreen. It's like now it can do something that it couldn't do before. But, like, here's the funny thing. I got to get going here pretty soon. I'm streaming longer than I normally do, but this subject has just irked me so heavily. It bugs me that no one complains that Apple allows you to now run iPhone and iPad apps on the Mac, right? Apple does that and no one complains. No one's saying like, but the Mac isn't optimized for a touchscreen. Macs don't have touchscreens. Why would we put iPad and iPhone apps on the Mac? It's like, I don't know, but Apple lets you. They provide the option. They're like, okay, this isn't super useful, but I guess you can just emulate touch with the mouse and keyboard. So they let you just directly run iPad and iPhone apps on your Mac. They bragged about that. That wasn't just like a little side feature. At DubDub, they were like, hey, everyone, look. If you have a great iPhone app or an iPad app, now you can boot it straight up onto your Mac. It's like, okay, I might do that, but not that much. But thanks, I guess. It's like, it's one of those features. It's like, I don't plan on using it, but it's nice to have. Whereas macOS option for the iPad, that's something a ton of people would use, a ton of people would ask for, a ton of people would spend gobs of money on, even if it was behind a high paywall. You can only do it if you get the 1 terabyte iPad, or you got to spend $200 to unlock macOS on the iPad. You can put it behind as much paywalls as you want, but just the option at least. I agree. Mac doesn't need touch. iPad Pro needs Pro apps, regardless of whether we get macOS on it or not. Yeah, but some kind of macOS dual booting is just the fastest way to do it, in my opinion. We've known Apple can make dual boot methods on their computers, and we know that macOS is perfectly fine running on M1, which is what the iPad runs on. The iPad has a display, it has speakers, it has keyboard and mouse support. So it would take the smallest amount of effort to just throw the code on the iPad and say, okay, now it boots up into macOS. We pretend the touchscreen doesn't work. We just deactivate that part of it, but when you reboot, you can switch back to iPadOS. It would take very little work opposed to trying to completely redesign iPadOS from the ground up to have Pro applications and to have all these things. That would take a lot of retooling and recoding opposed to just dump macOS on there, which would be a lot faster. Boot camp for iPad, essentially, yeah. But if we're going to be okay with touchscreen apps on non-touchscreen devices, I don't see what the big holdup is with putting touchscreen apps or non-touchscreen apps on a touchscreen device, especially if that device supports keyboard and mouse. iPad referred with military discounts, great pricing too. Yeah, I'm glad you guys could get that. Certified. Do I still have it in the chat? Yeah, certified refurbished iPads are really, really great value. I still love my iPad, and for the basics, again, for the general media consumption and email and browsing Twitter and Discord and stuff, the iPad is still great at that. For FaceTime, texting, all the basic stuff that your iPhone is just a tad too small for. But I just cannot recommend anyone buy an iPad now that's over $1,000. Like, I just don't see a point. Especially when you can buy this iPad that I've been using for years. You can buy this iPad now for under $700 from Apple with a brand new battery. And the iPad still doesn't have a calculator even. So, like, if we're not even getting a calculator, why are we assuming we're going to get Final Cut? If you will spend grands of money on a device, then you're a pro user. If so, then why get an iPad? This thing has the hardware of a MacBook Air. Because it could do both. It'd be the Swiss Army knife of Apple products. The M1 chip would cover Final Cut for prosumers, people that need something more than what iPadOS can handle, but They don't need M1X chip. You can use the Apple Pencil for drawing. You got cellular on the Mac now. You got mini LED on the Mac now. You got Face ID on the Mac now. All of this is theoretically possible with some very light code re-engineering, whereas adding touchscreens and Face ID and mini LED all to the Mac takes supply chains and complete retooling and re-engineering. LumaFusion is awesome, but not quite there yet. Yeah, LumaFusion is mostly limited by iPadOS. It's not even the iPad's fault. It's the software. So, yeah, it's a shame. I haven't ranted about this in a while. We used to rant about it on Twitch all the time, but now we're here, so I get some new people to check in. But I just have not heard a great argument yet, but I know why people think they don't do it, and I just think all of the arguments are stupid. Maybe there's hope that Apple's waiting for the M1 chip to be on multiple generations of iPads, and then they want to wait until they can bring Pro software to all the iPads at once instead of just one or two. So I'm disappointed by it. It's resulting in me basically not buying any new iPads for years now. Yeah, that we could have it so, like Beard is saying, with Sidecar, well, it's kind of working right now, but it doesn't work super well. But with Sidecar, you could be using macOS on the iPad, and then when you use your Apple Pencil, it works for drawing applications. But just the generic touch interface, yeah, you can just deactivate it just like it does with Sidecar. Yeah, I would love to hear actual Apple engineer's point of view. I don't think they would answer you. I think they would avoid the question. They'd just be like, oh, we're considering all kinds of Pro features. I would just be like, why can't the iPad do more? Why can't I put Apple's own video codec on the iPad? And they'd be like, I don't know. That would be nice, I guess. Bacon says, I run my entire business from my iPad for basic tasks like spreadsheets. I just wish I could do everything. That's why I still need my Mac. There you go. That's what I'm telling you. iPad could be so much more. Oof. Did you watch Golly's video about Neuralink, Tesla, and Apple? No, I didn't, but I think Neuralink is more long-term future. I don't think Neuralink is going to bump up against Apple for probably many decades, but under intensive gaming or phone usage, iPhone 12 display dims. I think Apple should bring copper cooling or whatever. The strip comes in Android phones. I noticed that yesterday. I was outside FaceTiming my dad for a while, and the brightness went down. So copper cooling could work. Also might just help to make the modems more efficient. I have to imagine the Qualcomm modems get really, really hot, and maybe if Apple switches to their own, they can get them to run cooler. That might be part of it, but I would love to see them... I would love to see them not have to overheat like that, especially where I live. It gets very hot. But anyway, I've been streaming for far too long. My wife's probably wondering where I am. So I appreciate you all tuning in. I appreciate the memberships, the super chats. You guys have been awesome and extremely generous, by the way. Thank you all very much. The Apple Pencil doesn't work for editing on Sidecar. It just like pretends to be the mouse, but there's no way to click it, obviously. So you can do like light tapping. You can like open a window or something with it, but you can't scroll. So it's basically not meant to be used. But anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care all. Bye-bye.